في أرضنا.
So let's put our hands together and give a warm Pennsylvania welcome to Brigitte Gabriel.
Thank you. Thank you. Wow, thank you so very much for making me feel so welcome. You know, people ask me all the time, Brigitte, don't you get depressed talking about such a heavy-duty subject, national security and the rise of radical Islam? And I say, of course I do. I'm human like everybody. But what keeps me energized, what keeps me going, is when I travel all over the nation and I meet people like you who take the time out of their busy schedule to come here and hear me speak because they love our country, because they are patriotic citizens. And I think to myself, it's people like you that keep me going. It's people like you that give me the smile on my face and the energy. So I thank you for being here tonight to encourage me to continue doing what I do. Thank you. We are here tonight at such an important time in our nation's history, especially weeks before a very important election coming up, to speak about national security and to speak about the rise of radical Islam worldwide and why that affects our nation and what we can do as citizens to make a difference to protect our country. As I'm speaking to you right now, radical Islam is on the rise and on the march worldwide. As I'm speaking to you right now, there are 44 conflicts around the world between Muslims and non-Muslims, regardless what the nationality of these non-Muslims is, regardless what language they speak, what color they are, where they live. 44 conflicts around the world. While we in America focus on what's happening in Afghanistan and in Iraq and in Pakistan because it affects us directly because we are spending monies in these countries and our soldiers are fighting there. We're not paying attention to what's happening in Chad. What happened in Djibouti last week? What happened in Mali 3 days ago? It's not even on our radar screen. But 44 wars happening around the world today between Muslims and non-Muslims. We in America are facing a major problem with radical Islam because it declared war on the United States. America has been attacked under different administrations for the last 30 years, regardless whether Republican or Democrat lived in the White House. America was attacked in 1979 under the Carter administration with the hostages in Iran. He was a Democrat. America was attacked again under the Ronald Reagan administration, a Republican, with the blowing up of the Marines in Lebanon in 1983. America was attacked again under the George Bush Sr. administration. America was attacked again under the Clinton administration, a Democrat. It was actually under President Clinton that Al-Qaeda attacked America for the first time in 1993, where they attacked the World Trade Center. It was also under President Clinton that the Taliban trained 10,000 Al-Qaeda members in Afghanistan. These people were not being trained for entertainment. They were being trained to attack the United States of America. At that time, George Bush Jr. and Dick Cheney were not even a blurb on the political American landscape. And then, of course, America was attacked again on September 11th, 2001. And that's when the buildings came down. And everybody came out on television the next day saying, well, they hate us because of our foreign policy. They hate us because we are in the Middle East. If we just get rid of George Bush and elect somebody else, everything is going to be fine. And people thought if we elect President Obama, all our sins are going to be forgiven. Everybody's going to get together and sing Kumbaya. That didn't happen. 2 days after President Obama became president, Al-Qaeda issued a press release saying, we continue our jihad against the United States regardless of who lives in the White House. And since President Obama became president in the last 4 years, we have arrested over 75 homegrown terrorists, all Muslims, either born into the Islamic faith or have converted to Islam, trying to kill Americans or perpetrate terrorist attacks against America. That's a major problem. And while President Obama wants you all to believe that Al-Qaeda is on the run, we killed Osama bin Laden, our problem is over, almost all of the homegrown terrorists we have arrested were not card-carrying members of Al-Qaeda. And here are a few names just to give you an idea. Nasser Abdu, the would-be Fort Hood second jihadist bomber, was not a card-carrying member of Al-Qaeda. Khalid al-Dawsari, the would-be bomber in Lubbock, Texas, who was putting together a biological bomb on a mass scale, was not a card-carrying member of Al-Qaeda. Muhammad Hussein, the would-be bomber in Baltimore, was not a card-carrying member of Al-Qaeda. Muhammad Mahmoud, the would-be bomber in Portland, Oregon, remember the guy who wanted to blow up the lighting of the Christmas tree last year? Was not a card-carrying member of Al-Qaeda. Faisal Shahzad, the guy who wanted to blow up Times Square, was not a card-carrying member of Al-Qaeda. We have a problem that we as a nation must address, burying our head in the sand and pretending the problem is solved for political reason or to score political points in whatever party is not serving our nation. The issue of national security affects me personally. For those of you who have never heard me speak, I'm going to share with you for 5 minutes my background so you'll understand why this is so important to me. You see, my 9/11 happened to me in 1975 when the radical Islamists blew up my home, bringing it down, burying me under the rubble wounded as they shouted, Allahu Akbar. My only crime was that I was a Christian living in a Christian town. I ended up wounded in a hospital for 2.5 months. And as I laid in the hospital wounded, hooked up to IVs in both arms, going from one surgery to another, I would ask my parents, why did they do this to us? And my father would tell me, because we are Christians, the Muslims consider us infidels and they want to kill us. So I learned since I was a 10-year-old little girl that I am wanted dead simply because I was born into the Christian faith and lived in a Christian town. Whether I practiced my religion or not, it was irrelevant in my enemy's eyes. We ended up leaving the hospital and coming back home. But my home was no longer the home I left. I ended up living in a bomb shelter, 8 by 10 room underground, without electricity, without water, and very little food. To get some food, we would crawl out under the bombs, and we would dig out different dandelions and different vegetation that grew around our bomb shelter, because it was the only greenery we had to eat. To get some water, we would crawl under snipers' bullets. We were surrounded with Islamic snipers. We would crawl under snipers' bullets to a nearby spring to get some water. And every time before we left, we said our last goodbyes, because we did not know if we're going to come back to our bomb shelter alive or dead, just to get a drink of water. In the wintertime, we lived in the mountains, and we didn't have any electricity, and we would freeze in the winter. It was so cold. My father would get out of the bomb shelter, and he would break twigs from the trees that grew around our bomb shelter, and he would bring them in, and he would pour benzene or kerosene or mazout on the fire and build a fire so we can warm up. And because we didn't have any ventilation in the bomb shelter, we would huddle around the fire to warm up, and many nights we would pass out because of carbon monoxide poisoning. And we had an agreement before we went to bed that whoever woke up first would drag the other two outside and slap them on their face to wake up, because we would be passing out from carbon monoxide poisoning. This became my existence. We would sit in the bomb shelter waiting for the world to come save us, listening to the news and hearing what's happening to the rest of Lebanon as radical Islamists rose and started coordinating together and started massacring the Christians in the country, going into Christian towns and massacring them by the thousand. The massacres they committed were seldom reported in the American media because the American media and Western media was all located in the Islamic section of the city. And nothing came out of Lebanon that did not have the approval of Yasser Arafat and the terrorists. And we waited, knowing what our fate is going to be, how they're going to come slaughter us, waiting for the world to wake up. And I remember my father watching the news, and he would say, oh, America's going to come save the Christians in Lebanon because they're going to hear about the rise of radical Islam and what's happening. And nobody came. And we waited on Britain, and we waited on France, and we thought the Western world is going to wake up and see what's happening with the rise of radical Islam. And nobody came. I remember 3 years into our ordeal, after living in the bomb shelter, a friend of ours, one of our Christian militia, stopped by, and he said, Brigitte, I just want you to know that we heard a lot of chatter on the radios, and I want you to know that if I don't see you tomorrow, if we are dead, I want to wish you a merciful death. And he left. And I remember, at the age of 13 years old, putting on my Easter dress, my Sunday best, because I wanted to look pretty when I'm dead, knowing that when they come to slaughter me, there would be no one to bury me. And I remember sobbing, begging my mother, I don't want to die. I'm only 13 years old. And there was nothing my mother could say to me. And we sat in the corner of our bomb shelter. And my father started reading from Psalms, I shall walk into the valley of death and fear no evil, for thou art with me. And my parents said to me, we lived a long life, you are a young child. When they come to slaughter us tonight, we'll create a distraction. You just run towards the Israeli border and never look back. We want you to save your life. You see, we lived on the border with Israel. And we knew if we run to the Jews and beg for help, the Jews are not going to slaughter us because we had more shared values with them than we had with the Muslims. Thank God I did not have to make that difficult decision that night, because that's the night when Israel came in physically into Lebanon and pushed away the radical Islamists and the Palestinians and set up Israeli checkpoints around our towns, around the hills of our towns, and Israeli military bases so we can stay alive at least, so that the Islamists will not be able to come and massacre us. And we went on living like this for another 5 years until 1982. When Israel invaded Lebanon. And Israel was working with the Christians to come into Lebanon, kick the radical Islamics out, and help the Christian Lebanese take back their democracy and reestablish their democracy. And they were able to do so. And that's when we came out of the bomb shelter and back to rebuilding our lives. I ended up moving to Israel in 1984 and becoming a news anchor for World News in the Middle East, covering world events and reporting on world events night after night. And as I read the news, world news, night after night, reporting on terrorist activities around the world, that's in the 80s, from 1984 to 1989, I started realizing that no matter where the terrorist activity took place, no matter on what continent, the name of the perpetrators were always the same. Ahmed, Muhammad, Hussein, Ali. The name of the victims were always Westerners, Christians and Jews. Terry Waite, Terry Anderson, Colonel Higgins, the Achille Lauro, the TWA, the Panam flights, and I can go on and on. As a matter of fact, in my first book titled Because They Hate, I list pages upon pages of terrorist attacks against the United States where America hit the snooze button and went back to sleep. And I started realizing that what I used to think was a regional problem between a majority Muslim Middle East trying to kill or expel the minority Christians and Jews had become a worldwide problem. But the world was not paying attention. The world did not connect the dots. The world lacked imagination. Isn't this exactly what the 9/11 Commission report said to us? We lacked imagination. It's not that we did not know that Al-Qaeda wants to attack the United States of America. After all, we are faced today with an enemy that is so open, so direct, does not have a hidden agenda, does not beat around the bush. They tell us exactly what they want to do. They not only tell us what they want to do, they issue a press release about it, send it to the newspapers, post it on the internet, and send a video press release to Al Jazeera, which airs on Al Jazeera and CNN. That's how direct they are. It's not that we did not know that Al-Qaeda wants to attack the United States. Al-Qaeda attacked the United States the first time in 1993. The only difference between the attacks of 1993 and 2001 is the buildings did not come down. Al-Qaeda attacked the World Trade Center in 1993. They attacked our Kubar Towers in 1995. They attacked our embassies in Kenya and Tanzania in 1997. They attacked the USS Cole, and then 8 months later, re-attacked the World Trade Center 8 years after the first time, this time bringing the World Trade Center down, killing almost 3,000 Americans, bringing America down to its knees. They were so confident. We were so asleep and so apathetic, and we were not paying attention, and we lacked imagination that they came back and re-attacked us on the same place twice. And America did not pay attention. And America finally woke up on September 11th and started asking questions. What did we do to offend the Islamic world? What did we do? And the psychoanalyst came on television the next day, and all the psychobabble trying to analyze what did we do to offend the Islamic world. And everybody started talking about, well, they hate us because of our foreign policy. Well, they hate us because we are in the Middle East. Total nonsense. If we would have just paid attention to what our enemy is saying to us. So what launched all this radicalism? What launched all this hatred around the world after World War II with radical Islam rising? I mean, after we finished communism, we thought, thank God, everything's over. Now the whole world is going to move on. Everything's great. We rebuild Japan. You know, the Hitler is gone. Communism is finished. We're fine. Who would have thought we're going to be dealing today with radical Islam? So what launched radical Islam? What is it that breathed life into this movement? Two things breathed life into the movement in the Middle East. And that's the discovery of oil, because they used their oil to fund Islamic terrorist organizations and radicalism around the world, and the coming of Khomeini into power in 1979, courtesy of Jimmy Carter, which breathed spiritualism into the life of the Islamic movement. What birthed the whole Islamic radical movement is an organization that you heard about very, very much, especially in the last year. It's called the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood is the oldest Islamic terrorist organization in the world, founded in 1928 in Egypt, and has 70 offshoot Islamic organizations, including Al-Qaeda and Hamas. Founded in 1928. Now you ask, in 1928, but I thought it was our foreign policy. That's why they hate us, because we are friends with Israel. And they hate us because we are in the Middle East. But if that's the fact, then why was the Muslim Brotherhood founded in 1928? The Muslim Brotherhood was founded in 1928 to bring back and resurrect the Islamic Caliphate, or the Islamic Empire, which ended 5 years prior in Turkey. In 1928, Israel wasn't even in existence, didn't exist. We had such an isolationist foreign policy that even in 1939, Newsweek magazine had on its front cover, country divided. 50% of Americans want to go to war with Hitler. 50% of Americans didn't give a care what happens in Europe. We had our jobs and we had the economy to worry about. That's how much of an isolationist policy we had. So the Muslim Brotherhood was created to bring back and resurrect the caliphate and establish an Islamic government on earth, because the Islamic government ended in Turkey 5 years prior in 1924. This is less than 100 years ago the Islamic Empire ended. The Islamic Empire existed for 1,400 years. At one point, Islam covered more of the earth's surface than the Roman Empire did at its peak. And a group of Muslim radicals in Egypt thought to themselves, how can Christendom win over Islam? After all, Islam is superior to all other religions. Muslims are superior to all other people in the world. How could we be humiliated so much? That's when the Muslim Brotherhood was launched, to resurrect the Islamic pride and reestablish the caliphate. Why should we be concerned about the Muslim Brotherhood in the United States? Because the Muslim Brotherhood wrote a plan in 1982. It's a 100-year plan for radical Islam to infiltrate and dominate the West and establish an Islamic government on earth. In the counterterrorism circles, this plan became known as the Project, the Muslim Brotherhood Project. What makes the Muslim Brotherhood Project so unique and so important is it gives tactics and proposals as to how to infiltrate the West, how to use our open-mindedness against us, how to use our laws against us. They talk about how to set up non-profit organizations and human rights organizations and civic organizations and maintain the appearance of moderation in order to advance the radical Islamic agenda in the West. They talk about how to get democratically elected Muslims on all levels in the West, including government, NGOs, etc. They talk about how to set up recreational centers in the inner city in order to recruit from the inner cities and the minorities in Western countries. They talk about how to position Muslim interns on all levels of government within governmental offices in the West in order to have an inside view as to how policy is done on the highest levels. They wrote the plan for the United States in 1991. Here's the plan for the United States, for the destruction of the United States. This plan was presented as evidence in the Holy Land Foundation trial, the largest ever terrorism trial in the history of the United States, where America sued the Holy Land Foundation for raising millions of dollars in America and sending it overseas to the Middle East to support terrorism. Our government handed down 108 guilty verdicts for Muslim Americans and Muslim American organizations raising millions of dollars in America to support terrorism overseas. Here is the title of the plan. مذكرة تفسيرية للهدف الاستراتيجي العام للجماعة في أمريكا الشمالية. An explanatory memorandum for the strategic goal for the brothers, for the group in North America, written on 5/22/1991, 10 years prior to September 11th. And I'm going to read you just one paragraph of this plan so you'll have an idea of what they have in mind. This is paragraph number 4, titled Understanding the Role of the Muslim Brother in North America. The process of settlement is a civilization jihadist process with all the word means. The Ikhwan, which is the Arabic word for brother, must understand that their work in America is a kind of grand jihad in eliminating and destroying the Western civilization from within and sabotaging its miserable house by their hands and the hands of the believers so that it is eliminated and Allah's religion is made victorious over all other religions. Now, is there anything vague about this paragraph? Are they clear? They don't beat around the bush, do they? They tell you exactly what they want to do. It's not like they're hiding their intentions at all. The most important page of this document is the last page. The last page lists 29 front Islamic organizations set up in the United States in order to destroy our miserable house by our own hands. And here they are. I'm going to read you some of them, which I think you may be familiar or have heard their names before. Number 1 is ISNA, Islamic Society of North America. Now, if the name ISNA sounds familiar to you, it's because they are now advisors to President Obama about Middle East policy. They have been advisors to President Obama about Middle East policy for the last 4 years. It was the president of ISNA who wrote the speech for President Obama, which he delivered in Cairo. Remember his famous speech to the Arabic world? ISNA, right now, is the organization that certifies Muslim chaplains for the U.S. military. That's how much they are inside us. You wonder why the FBI right now are investigating 100 American Muslim soldiers, active soldiers serving in the United States military? 100. You think Nidal Hassan is the exception? You wonder where the recruiting is coming from? We not only have the fox watching the hen house, we have the fox inside the White House talking to the ear of the president. Number 2 on the list is the MSA, the Muslim Student Association. The Muslim Student Association has more chapters on American college campuses than the Democrats and the Republican combined. You wonder how we're losing our universities. Number 8 on the list is NATE, the North American Islamic Trust. NATE owns 90% of the mosques in the United States. Number 22 on the list is IAP, Islamic Association for Palestine, which later became CARE, Council on American Islamic Relations. How many of you have seen CARE on television being interviewed or know what CARE is all about? Few. Yeah, you've seen them. That's the Muslim Brotherhood plan. And at this point, I want to focus on the education, because in this plan, they wrote in detail how they're going to focus to destroy every segment of our society. So they established organizations to cover every segment of society: the media, publishing, education, politics, etc., everything you can think of. But at this point, I'm going to focus on the education, because I'm going to show you how we are losing the future generations of America because how smart our enemy has become. We know they want to attack us militarily. We know Al-Qaeda. I mean, look, we just foiled an attack yesterday in New York. We know Al-Qaeda sympathizers who adhere to the same ideology want to blow us up, want to kill us. We know that. But what most people are not paying attention to is the cultural invasion and the sabotaging of our culture from within. And they chose the education because what's the best way to plan for the future? The next generation. If you can get the next generation, you can change the country. So they started using their oil wealth to pump millions of dollars into our universities, setting up Middle East study departments and political science departments, and appointing Arab professors who are anti-America and anti-Israel to teach the young Americans that Israel is evil, America is bad, and the poor Islamic world is oppressed because of America's imperialism. Here is the extent of the Saudi peddling that has taken place in our universities. King Fahd of Saudi Arabia has donated $20 million to set up a Middle East study department at the University of Arkansas. $22 million donated to Harvard University from 2 Saudi sheikhs linked to Al-Qaeda. $28.1 million went to Georgetown. $5 million to MIT, $1.5 million to Texas A&M, $5 million to Rutgers, $5 million to Columbia University. Other recipients of Saudi tainted monies include UC Santa Barbara, Johns Hopkins University, Duke University, American University, UCLA, Howard University, etc. From the Ivy Leagues to the community colleges and everything in between, we pump the gas and they pump poison into the hearts and minds of our future generations. And that's why we must become energy independent tomorrow. To give you an idea of how smart they have become, when Ahmadinejad came to the UN, remember where all the cronies came in to speak at the UN for the UN annual meeting? When Ahmadinejad came and spoke at the UN 2 weeks ago, he held a private dinner at the Warwick Hotel where he was staying and invited 150 American students and professors from our top elite universities. He invited them from Harvard, NYU, Rutgers University, University of Pennsylvania, Penn State, Columbia, and Story Brooks. Ahmadinejad was greeted with a standing ovation when he walked into the room. People, students, our future generations, our future leaders addressed him as Your Excellency. One lady said she was honored to be in his presence. When Ahmadinejad came into the room, the students were told that this meeting is the most important meeting of Ahmadinejad in his visit to the United States. Quote, because you are the people who will shape the future of the world and the United States, end quote. That's what was happening in New York 2 weeks ago. American public has no idea. Ahmadinejad in his speech used words like interfaith and tolerance and dialogue. They know how to play us like a violin. They know exactly the buzzwords that work on the West. Ahmadinejad. People ask me all the time, Brigitte, why is the media so biased? I mean, my gosh, God forbid, you know, you are subjected to watching CNN International if you are stuck on one of those cruise ships. If any of you have ever taken a cruise, that's the only thing you can watch. It's like watching Al Jazeera in Arabic. And I tell Al Jazeera in English, and I tell people, why are you surprised? Because for the last 16, 20 years, all these students graduating out of our universities, being fed a steady diet of hatred and resentment against our country, are today the news anchors, the news reporters, the news writers, the bureau chiefs, the producers, the policy makers, the foreign policy shapers. And you are surprised? Just look at our president. We don't have a commander-in-chief. We have an apologizer-in-chief who never misses an opportunity to apologize. The strategy worked so well on college campus that the Islamists decided, why wait until the kids get to college? Why don't we start with them in 6th and 7th grade and take them all through middle school and high school? This way, by the time they get to college, they are 18 years old and they can vote. So they launched the Islam Project. The Islam Project began providing consultants in 1991 to America's top publishers that publish history books and social studies books to consult with them on how to teach Islam in public schools. So the Islam course was introduced. The Islam course is a 3-week course where American students have to adopt Islam for 3 weeks, become Muslims, memorize and recite verses from the Quran, adopt Islamic names, and go to a mosque on a field trip in order to experience what it's like to be a Muslim. And when I started speaking about this, and I wrote about it in my second book titled They Must Be Stopped, which came out in 2008, people tell me, oh, Brigitte, you are exaggerating. I mean, that couldn't possibly be happening in the United States. After all, we have separation of church and state. I mean, look, we can't even call it a Christmas holiday. It's called winter break. You know, we cannot sing Christmas carols at school. We don't have Easter holiday. We have spring break. And I tell them, oh, yeah? Here's the course. There's nothing like show and tell. You can tell I got practice at this, don't you? And I said, here's the course. This course was launched in 1991, 10 years prior to September 11th. This course was copyrighted in 1991 by an organization called, a publishing company called Interaction Publishers, Inc., doing business as Interact. Remember how I told you they set up organizations in America on all levels, media, publishing, writing, politics, everything you can think of. But we're going to focus on the education. Here's how the course starts. The course starts by, from the beginning, you and your classmates will become Muslims. You will be a member of a caravan. The teacher is already giving instructions to the students, okay, you're going to become Muslims. The teacher continues his or her instructions by saying, dressing as a Muslim and trying to be involved will increase your learning and enjoyment. Finally, trying your best at all tasks will guarantee you an excellent grade and a more enjoyable time. The teacher is already dangling the great carrot in front of the students. Here are Islamic names that the students have to choose from. They have men's names and women's names. For the men, Abdullah, Khalid, Hassan, Hamza, Ibrahim. For the girls, Karima, Maryam, Noor, Amina, Fatima, Sabira, etc. They have a whole list they can choose from. And these are wisdom cards. Now, I'm giving you only the highlight of the book. As you can see, I'm just flipping through a lot of pages. I'm just giving you the tip of the iceberg, so you'll have a general idea of what is being taught to the students. 6th and 7th grade. Here are wisdom cards. These are cue cards, like, you know, for students to memorize their lesson. Like in math, you know, they have cue cards to memorize their multiplication tables, etc. Well, this wisdom card in particular that I'm going to discuss with you deals with jihad. And I chose this card in particular because, you hear jihad obviously plays a major role in Islam. You've got terrorist organizations who are named Islamic Jihad, Al-Mujahideen. You've got suicide bombers who record the last video who say that they are blowing themselves up fi sabil al-jihad, in the path of jihad. So obviously jihad plays a major role in terrorism. But here's what they're teaching our students in public schools. A jihad is a struggle by Muslims against oppression, invasion, and injustice. That's a fact card. Now, why are we concerned about these words, and these words are familiar to you? Because these are the talking points of Al-Qaeda. Anytime Al-Qaeda issues a press release as to why they are attacking America, what do they say? We continue our jihad against America because we are fighting oppression. We are fighting invasion. We are fighting injustice. Every time you hear the words of a Palestinian suicide bomber or any suicide bomber tries to blow himself up, the poor freedom fighter trying to blow himself up. Why? Because he is fighting injustice. He is fighting oppression. He is fighting invasion. So now our enemy is teaching their talking points to our students through our books paid for by our tax dollars in our public schools to little Johnny and Sally. Do you see how dangerous this is? People have no idea how we are losing the next generation. By the way, the word jihad is mentioned in the Quran 40 times, 36 times out of 40 as a holy war against the infidels in order to kill them or subjugate them. So why they are teaching the students this? Because when these students are 20 years old and 30 years old, and they are being taught a false basis of what they're dealing with or what jihad is all about, when these kids are going to be at that age, they are the future leaders of America. They're going to be watching our soldiers come back from fighting whatever war in some godforsaken country. They're going to come home and they're going to look at our soldiers and say, well, of course they want to kill you and blow you up. These poor people are fighting invasion and injustice and oppression, and you are invading their land and you're not being just to them. Of course they hate you. Do you see how we're losing the next generation? Hitler made a very important statement. Hitler said, give me the children, I will change society in 10 years. And that's exactly what he did. And that's how we are losing our future generations. You wonder where homegrown terrorism is coming from? You wonder how good-hearted Americans, raised as Baptists, raised as Catholics, who convert to Islam and become suicide killers trying to perpetrate terrorist attacks against America, blow themselves up, not only to kill themselves, but to kill fellow Americans? That's how they are recruiting them. It's happening under our eyes and we are not paying attention. And since we are speaking at a church, I just have to share this prayer that they analyze in public schools. Here's a prayer, the Shahada prayer, which is the equivalent to the salvation Christian prayer, where I accept Jesus into my heart as my Lord and Savior, that somebody says when they want to convert to Christianity. Well, this is the Shahada prayer, the Islamic version of that, when people say when they want to convert to Islam. Here's what the students have to analyze in the classroom, paid for by our tax dollars. Praise be to Allah, Lord of creation, the compassionate, the merciful, King of Judgment Day. You alone we worship, and to you alone we pray for help. Did I mention this is public schools? Are you following me here? Guide us to the straight path, the path of those whom you have favored, which is the Muslims, nor of those who have gone astray, who have incurred your wrath, which is the Jews, nor of those who have gone astray, which is the Christians and the atheists. Can you imagine? Can you imagine this being analyzed in public schools? Can you imagine if Pastor Steve here decided to go to public school and says, okay, you all, now for the next 3 weeks, you all are going to become Christians. We're going to memorize and recite verses from the Bible. We're going to analyze the salvation prayer. And then you're going to go with me to church on Sunday to experience what it's like to be a Christian. What do you think will happen to him? Ah, my Lord, can you imagine what the ACLU would do? Don't get me wrong. I'm all for education about religion in public schools. My kids went to public school. I have 2 children. I want my children to have a well-rounded education about Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam. But I want them to be taught all equal as a well-rounded education. I do not want my kids indoctrinated to anything. Let me do the teaching about religion in my own home to my children. And by the way, this course right now is no longer just a 3-week course. This course right now is weaved into our social studies books and our history books all through high school, to the point where the SOL test that the students have to pass in order to get to college, 22 questions of the SOL testing are out of this course. That's how bad things are. But you see how mellow they're doing it, how they're doing it in a stealth way in our culture, while everybody's paying attention about terrorist attacks. Oh, we killed Osama bin Laden, you know, terrorism is over. Look how they are getting the next generation. And everybody is afraid to say anything. Everybody is afraid to offend anybody. Everybody have lost their tongue to political correctness. And I believe we need to throw political correctness in the garbage where it belongs and start calling a spade a spade. It's amazing. We're losing our country, and nobody wants to say anything. Whatever happened to the American spirit? Whatever happened to the American spunk? I am sick and tired when I hear people criticize America, see all the ills of America, do not have anything else to say about America. They criticize, this country is so bad, this country is so bad. Well, you know what? If this country is so bad, we'll give them a one-way ticket to get out of here and back to whatever country they came from. We are not perfect. Nobody is perfect. America's not perfect. We all have our own problems. But you know what? Last time I checked, America was God's gift to the universe, that people were coming from all over the world here to live here, including Muslims. When I look at this room, I see a tapestry of color. People from all backgrounds, from all nationality backgrounds, people who are here, black, white, African Americans, brown, blonde, black hair, yellow, I don't care. We all came to this country seeking a better life. Your great-grandparents came here. You came here. If you are a third-generation immigrant who came on the Mayflower, or a first-generation immigrant like me who came on the TWA, we came here to have a better life. We came here because we left tyranny and came to make a better life in America. And I am offended and sick and tired when I hear people say, I'm a Spanish American, and I'm Italian American, and I'm an African American, and I'm a Vietnamese American. I am nothing but an American. As you can see, I'm not politically correct. And while I'm at it, I believe English is the official language of the United States and shall remain so. Now, I didn't come here only to share with you problems. I came here to share with you about solutions. September 11th was a defining moment for the United States. September 11th changed our lives. September 11th was a defining moment for us as Americans. That day, we were all one, united as Americans. We all did the exact same thing. We all turned on our TV screens and parked ourselves in front of our TV sets and watched in horror the images of the World Trade Center tumble down. We cried, we were angry, we were hurt, we were frustrated, we felt helpless, we didn't know what to do. We could not believe someone could hate us so much that they were willing to hijack airplanes and use them as human missiles and fly them into skyscrapers. September 11th defined our nation. September 11th was especially defining for me. You see, that day my daughters came home from school, and as I was watching television, like all of you, My youngest daughter, who was around my age, said to me, "Mommy, why did they do this to us?" And I looked at my daughter and I said to her, "They hate us because they consider us infidels and they want to kill us." Here we were, 2 generations apart. I had to repeat to my daughter exactly what my father said to me 30 years prior in Lebanon. Here we were, 2 continents apart, 8,000 miles apart, 30 years apart. I was a young Lebanese girl, she's a young American girl. I spoke the Arabic language, she spoke the English language. I had to repeat to my daughter exactly what my father said to me 30 years prior in Lebanon. That moment, that day was my defining moment. That's the day I was reborn as an activist. That's the day I vowed I will do everything I can to make sure that my daughter will never ever have to look into her child's eye and repeat to him or to her what my daddy said to me and what I said to her. That's the day I became an activist. That's the day I sat up in my couch in the family room and I said, what can I do to serve my country? What can I do as a citizen? I launched ACT, American Congress for Truth, and I started traveling nationwide speaking about the threat of radical Islam to world peace and national security. I wanted to educate millions of Americans about the threat of radical Islam. But I learned very quickly that while education is important, education by itself is not sufficient. Education must be coupled with action. And that's when I launched ACT for America, our political lobbying activism arm in 2007. Right now, ACT for America is the largest national security organization in the United States, with almost 250,000 members, 750 chapters nationwide, with a full-time lobbyist on Capitol Hill. Our motto is this: if our elected officials are not willing to see the light, we're going to make them feel the heat. Thank you. I cannot begin to tell you how much it means to me to travel the country and speak before people like you who are helping our organization and standing with us. And I want you to know that every time I travel and I speak, I know that there is a bullet out there with my name on it waiting to kill me. But I am willing to take the risk in order to do what needs to be done to protect the country for your children and my children and our future generation. And as I do that, I encounter people like you who stand with us financially and enable me to travel the country and do exactly that. And I want you to know that this is how we raise money for ACT for America and no other way. I want you to know that tonight while I'm speaking here, the church did not pay me an honorarium. I paid for my own visit. I speak here for free. I paid for my flight and Guy's flight, for our hotels, for our meals, for our rental cars, because we believe that investing in your community is very important for the security of our nation. And we were willing to do this investment in order to preach this message in our nation and wake up as many people as possible. And to give you an idea of my schedule so you will know how we are raising money for this organization and building it. Last Monday, I started in Oklahoma City. On Tuesday night in Skytook, Oklahoma. On Wednesday night in Morse, Oklahoma. In Thursday night in Wichita Falls, Texas. In Friday in Texas as well. On Saturday morning, I flew to New York. On Sunday, I flew to Pittsburgh. Monday night, I spoke in Butler, Pennsylvania. I flew back to Norfolk on Tuesday. I was home for 2 days, Tuesday and Wednesday. Tonight, I am here. Tomorrow, I fly back home. I'm home only for a few days. I hit the road again next week to Albuquerque, New Mexico, Roswell, New Mexico, San Francisco, Los Angeles, back to Cheshire, Connecticut. I don't come home until the election. I'm sharing this private information with you so you'll understand the commitment that I have personally into this organization and this work, and the commitment we have as an organization. So I want to thank you especially those who stood with us financially tonight, for giving me the opportunity to serve you and serve our nation to do what needs to be done. And I would like at this point for all our veterans and military personnel to please stand up and be recognized and remain standing, because I have a message for you. All our veterans and military personnel, please stand up. Wow. Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Remain standing. Thank you. I want you to remain standing because I have a message for you. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for building a nation for me where I can come and be all I can be as a citizen, as a free American, where I can leave tyranny behind and come to this great nation to exercise my freedom of speech, my freedom of religion, my freedom of expression, and every other freedom I have. I know that my freedom is built upon your shoulders and your sacrifice. I want to thank you for every sleepless night you spent in some ditch serving our country. I want to thank you for every meal you missed. I want to thank you for every holiday you spent away from your family. I want to thank you for every family occasion you missed while serving away, putting your life on the line, so we can get together and have our barbecues and enjoy our family holidays, because we know we've got heroes like you protecting us. You are, thank you. You are not only my heroes, but you are the heroes of millions of Americans who are not here with you tonight. I thank you on their behalf. You are the heroes of millions of people around the world, whom I thank you on their behalf, who are still stuck under tyranny, who wish they have a military like you to come save them. On their behalf, I thank you. And I vow to you that I am building an organization in Act for America that will always praise you, that will always lift you up, that will always honor you, that will always praise and sing of your sacrifice, and ensure that our future generation will always understand where their freedom comes from and how their freedom is built upon your shoulders. May God bless you, one and all. I am honored to be in your presence. May God bless our country. Thank you all for being here tonight. God bless. Thank you.